Good Thursday morning, my friends. It is November 20th, about 7:30 in the morning. My name is Melissa from Melissa's Struggling Walk with Jesus, and I am using the Amplified Holy Bible and the Navigator's Bible reading plan to share the Word of God with you. And in this video, I am going to be sharing 1 Samuel chapter 17. The title is Goliath's Challenge. And it says, "Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle and were assembled at Soka, which belongs to Judah, and they camped between Soka and Azekah in Ephes Dammim. Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they camped in the valley of Elah, and assembled in battle formation to meet the Philistines. The Philistines were standing on the mountain on one side, and Israel was standing on the mountain on the other side, and the valley between them." Verse 4. "Then a champion came out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span." In verse 4, where it says a champion, the Hebrew refers to one who fights alone, single-handedly, representing his nation. If warring nations agree to the contest, a great deal of bloodshed can be avoided. And also in verse 4, where it says 6 cubits and a span, this is about 9 feet 10 inches tall. Verse 5. "He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor, which is overlapping metal plates, which weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze." In verse 5, where it says 5,000. So the weight is uncertain, but may have been about 100 pounds or more. All right, verse 6. "He had bronze shin protectors on his legs, and a bronze javelin hung between his shoulders." In verse 6, where it says javelin, or perhaps a scimitar, which is a short curved sword. Verse 7. "The wooden shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam. The blade head of his spear weighed 600 shekels of iron, and a shield bearer walked in front of him." All right, verse 7, where it says weaver's beam. For example, the cross beam of a loom. Also in verse 7, where it says 600 shekels. This is probably about 12 pounds or more. And also in verse 7, where it says shield bearer. The shield was the type designed to protect the whole body, so it was probably about 8½ feet tall. All right, verse 8. "Goliath stood and shouted to the battle lines of Israel, saying to them, 'Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not the Philistine? And are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves and have him come down to me.' If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall become our servants and serve us." Again the Philistine said, "I defy the battle lines of Israel this day. Give me a man so that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Verse 12. "Now David was the son of the Ephrathite of Bethlehem in Judah, named Jesse, who had 8 sons. Jesse was old in the days of Saul, advanced in years among men." In verse 12, where it says Ephrathite, other Bible literature says Ephrathite was an older name for a resident of Bethlehem. All right, verse 13. his 3 older sons had followed Saul into battle. The names of his 3 sons who went to battle were Eliab, the firstborn, next Abinadab, and third Shammah. David was the youngest, and now the 3 oldest followed Saul. But David went back and forth from Saul to tend to his father's flock at Bethlehem. The Philistine Goliath came out morning and evening and took his stand for 40 days. Then Jesse said to David his son, "Take for your brothers an ephah of this roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread, and run quickly to the camp to your brothers." Verse 18. Also take these 10 cuts of cheese to the commander of the unit. See how your brothers are doing and bring back news of them. In verse 18 where it says unit, other Bible literature says 1,000. 19. Now they are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. All right, 1 Samuel chapter 17, starting at verse 20. The title goes into David Accepts the Challenge. And it says, So David got up early in the morning, left the flock with the keeper, picked up the provisions, and went just as Jesse had directed him. And he came to the encampment as the army was going out in battle formation, shouting the battle cry. Israel and the Philistines drew up in battle formation, army against army. Then David left his provisions in the care of the supply keeper and ran to the ranks and came and greeted his brothers. As he was talking with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath named Goliath, was coming up from the army of the Philistines. And he spoke these same words again, and David heard them. And the men of Israel all saw the men. They fled from him and were very frightened. The men of Israel said, Have you seen this man who is coming up? Surely he is coming up to defy Israel. The king will reward the man who kills him with great riches, and will give him his daughter in marriage, and make his father's house family, free from taxes and service in Israel. Then David spoke to the men who were standing by him. What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes the disgrace of his taunting from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he has taunted and defied the armies of the living God? Verse 27. The men told him, This is what will be done for the man who kills him. Verse 27 where it says told him, other Bible literature says spoke according to his word. Verse 28. 28 through 30 was used by my pastor, and it says, Now Eliab, his older brother, heard what he said to the men, and Eliab's anger burned against David, and he said, Why have you come down here? With whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption, overconfidence, and the evil of your heart, for you have come down in order to see the battle. In verse 28 where it says anger, other Bible literature says his nose got hot. Verse 29, But David said, What have I done now? Was it not just a harmless question? Verse 30, Then David turned away from Eliab to someone else and asked the same question. And the people gave him the same answer as the first time. All right, 1 Samuel chapter 17, starting with verse 31, this is where David kills Goliath. And it says, When the words that David spoke were heard, the men reported them to Saul, and he sent for him. David said to Saul, in verse 32, Let no man's courage fail because of him, Goliath. Your servant will go out and fight with this Philistine. In verse 32, where it says courage, Other Bible literature says heart. 33. Then Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for you are only a young man, and he has been a warrior since his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant was tending his father's sheep when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock. I went out after it and attacked it and rescued the lamb from its mouth. And when it rose up against me, I seized it by its whiskers and struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, since he has taunted and defied the armies of the living God." David said, "The Lord has rescued me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear. He will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and may the Lord be with you." Then Saul dressed David in his garments and put a bronze helmet on his head and put a coat of mail armor on him. Then David fastened his sword over his armor and tried to walk, but he could not, because he was not used to them. And David said to Saul, "I cannot go with these, because I am not used to them." So David took them off. Verse 40. Then he took his shepherd's staff in his hand and chose for himself 5 smooth stones out of the stream bed and put them in his shepherd's bag which he had, that is, in his shepherd's pouch. With his sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. In verse 40, where it says smooth stones offered less resistance to the air in flight and would travel with greater speed and accuracy. The sling was a pouch attached to the ends of the 2 long leather thongs and was a formidable weapon, as the Philistine giant was about to discover. The rest of this chapter, verses 41 through 58, was used by my pastor. And verse 41 says, "The Philistine came and approached David with his shield bearer in front of him." Verse 42, "When the Philistine looked around and saw David, he derided and disparaged him because he was just a young man with a ruddy complexion and a handsome appearance." 43, "The Philistine said to David, 'Am I a dog that you come to me with shepherd's staffs?' And the Philistine cursed David by his gods." 44, "The Philistine also said to David, 'Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field.'" 44. That was 44. 45. Then David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have taunted." In verse 45, where it says javelin, this weapon may have been similar to a scimitar, which is a short, curved sword. Verse 46, "This day the Lord will hand you over to me, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the corpses of the army of the Philistines this day to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the earth, so that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel." Verse 47, "And that his entire assembly may know that the Lord does not save with the sword or with the spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will hand you over to us." 48, "When the Philistine rose and came forward to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine." 49, "David put his hand into his bag and took out a stone and slung it, and it struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone penetrated his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. 50. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and he struck down the Philistine and killed him. And there was no sword in David's hand. 51. So he ran and stood over the Philistine, grasped his sword and drew it out of his sheath and killed him, and cut off his head with it. And when the Philistines saw that their mighty champion was dead, they fled. 52. The men of Israel and Judah stood with a shout and pursued the Philistines as far as the entrance to the valley and the gates of Ekron. And the fatally wounded Philistines fell along the way to Shiraim, even as far as Gath and Ekron. 53. The sons of Israel returned from their pursuit of the Philistines and plundered their camp. 54. Then David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his weapons in his tent. 55. When Saul saw David going out against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the captain of the army, Abner, whose son is this young man? And Abner answered, By your life, O king, I do not know. 56. The king said, Ask whose son the young man is. 57. When David returned from killing Goliath the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. 58. Saul asked him, Whose son are you, young man? And David answered, I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem. All right, that is all I'm sharing today. This is the first part of the thing. I need to read chapter 18, but I've got to get out of here and head to work. But each of us need to be going to every battle, every frustration, every problem we have with the same strength that David did. We need to fight our battles like the Lord is with us, because He is. Such confidence. David knew there was a God, and he knew that the God would do this. Praise the Lord. All right, I've got to head to work, guys. I hope you have a wonderful and beautiful day. And may God be with you.